The last thing I had us do in the training is to work on a slow sun salutation. We broke down the poses of plank pose, chaturanga, up dog, downward dog, mountain pose, really talking about mountain pose alignment and keeping that alignment throughout your plank, down dog, all of those poses. So focusing on that really good alignment principles and practicing ourselves. So when it comes to the poses, we'll have to do some practice and we're going to work with people in person in training to note your alignment and make any corrections needed, and also share with you as training goes on different ways to modify the poses and to customize, to use props or to make it more beneficial for different kinds of needs of people. So a slow sun salutation is what I typically do before going into the breath-based sun salutations. So I will hold in each pose for about 3 breaths or more, and even just kind of disregarding the breath for a moment to talk about the alignment in each pose. So first it's mountain pose. How are we standing here? Going from the ground up, talk about the feet, the legs, the hips, the pelvis, the shoulders, mountain pose. And then we're moving on to a forward fold. So hold them in the forward fold, talk a little bit about it, and then that half lift. Talk about the alignment with the half lift. What are you doing? Where are you lengthening? Hold that one for a while. And then stepping back into plank pose. This is a great place to hold people to build strength. The one thing I do have to tell you in plank pose is every time you get people to plank pose for the first one, always, always, always mention the option to take the knees to the floor. So I don't want people to think that they can't take the knees or that they have to struggle through this. Check in with the breath or how the strength feels of the day. And if you're still building strength, take your knees down to the ground and hold that one, because you can still get a nice plank alignment from knees to crown of the head on your knees. So take your knees. From plank pose and shifting forward up onto the tippy toes, bending the elbows no more than 90 degrees. And I know this is a place everyone really loves to hold in chaturanga. Not really, but talking about chaturanga a little bit, maybe spending a few more cues there, or talking about it before you get there even could help too. So spending time there. If you're dropping to your belly down to prone position, that's another place we could hold and stay for a moment, setting up yourself for cobra or upward facing dog. Hold an up dog, again, 3 breaths or so to talk about the alignment, where your hands should be, where your shoulders should be, where your toes should be, and going from the ground up. What's on the base and then working way up. Hold there. And then, downward facing dog. Shift into downward facing dog, talk about it. That's all. Just keep talking about the poses. Come up with as much as you can to say the alignment of each pose and how to get people into it. There's a lot that we went through as far as the hands. So the grip of the hands, a lot of people were saying that their wrists got sore easily. So if you press into the ground and press into the fingertips, the pads of the fingers, like you're pressing down until you can see the whites of the fingers, and I should not be able to come around and lift your fingers off your mat. Whether you're in tabletop or down dog, your fingertips should stay down. So you're pressing down, putting a little more weight into the fingertips. It takes a little pressure off of the heel of the hand, which takes more pressure off the wrist. So pressing to the fingertips, and then using this centerpiece of your hand as like a suction cup, taking it down. So that's a good thing to also bring up in your alignments or one of your poses, whether that's plank pose, tabletop pose, or downward facing dog, talking about the placement of the hands, widespread fingers, where they need to be as far as shoulder distance apart. So using the sun salutation sequence to slowly build people up into knowing what the poses are and what they should feel like. So I want you to work on that too with your breath-based sun salutation, that inhale, reach up, exhale, forward fold, inhale. So you can do the breath-based one, typically in a class, after you go through the first slow sun salutation A. So I want you to come up with your own words and alignment for that slow sun salutation from the ground up. Move on to the next pose, move on to the next pose, and practice teaching that. Practice teaching slow sun salutation, then practice teaching breath-based sun salutation. There's so much you can do with the sun salutation, and if you hate sun salutations, that's okay. I'm using the sun salutation because it's an easy and well-known sequence, and also just gives you strength, flexibility, building heat, in one of the safest way possible. So doing your own variation is fine if you're one of those, to the belly cobra pose type of people. If you're a chaturanga up dogger type of person, awesome. Do what works best for you and what your teaching style is, and I can't wait to see what you come up with. So slow sun salutation, 3 to 5 breaths in each pose without going too fast, moving from pose to pose, and then we do the breath-based one. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So come up with your own script for that slow sun salutation. You don't have to write it down. Just start to think about it and practice it as if you're practicing with someone who has never ever seen these poses. So you can't just say, and shift back to downward facing dog, because they will look at you like, what? So even the transitions, you have to be a little bit more mindful about talking to the body. What is your body feeling? Which areas are engaging? Which are stretching? Which are lifting? Where are you shifting? Which direction? So many things I know. But you're going to get this, I promise you, and you're going to have a lot of fun with it. So work on the slow sun salutation, and then we'll move on and keep practicing the breath-based sun salutations. Come up with your 3 scripts for your sun salutation with movement cues, but also work on the slow one. So slow and fast. Okay? Awesome. And that was what we had for our module on teacher training number 1. Next up, I'm going to recap your homework so that you're able to know exactly what is due by the next week or for the next module.